We have a Lucky Severson report now on the large number of ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jews living in tightly knit communities in and around New York City. Most of these Hasidim are content with the piety and traditions of the lives into which they were born, but some choose to leave, often at a high emotional price.
They live conspicuously pious lives in a secular world, especially in enclaves and suburbs of New York. Ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jews observe the strict rules of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, and its 613 commandments. Their structured lifestyle seems to work for the majority, but for some, the lack of choices is too rigid. So they choose to leave, even though doing so can be very painful. Hasidic groups remain some of the most insular religious sects in the U.S. Sol FOIA worker knows he was one of them.
I think that's what surprises most people, most outsiders, is that how can something this insular be happening right here in the middle of New York City? As I've moved farther away from it, it kind of shocks me too, actually.
When I tell people that I grew up 30 miles north of New York, that I went into the city and that I had never seen a movie before I was in my 20s, they think I'm insane.
Chani Getter grew up, married, and had 3 children before she broke away from her Hasidic community. Those who leave Hasidism paint a picture of a very puritanical and sheltered way of life.
When I left, I moved into my own apartment and I started driving. And as a woman who was driving, my parents disowned me. In our sect, women did not drive. And so for 8 years, they didn't talk to me.
In Hebrew, the word Hasidim translates to mean the pious ones. They are defined by their devotion to a hereditary leader known as the Rebbe, by their distinctive clothing and Yiddish language. Professor Samuel HEILMAN is a Jewish scholar at Queens College.
They have everything that makes up a culture: social norms, language, a career pattern in life. Even the ones who leave say that there are aspects of their lives that they left behind that they miss. To go to a Hasidic gathering and to sing the songs and to dance in the circle and to be enfolded into the community and to hear your voice in a chorus of other voices, this is a tremendously exciting experience. And when you leave and you're all alone in the city.
Professor HEILMAN says there are as many as 350,000 Hasidic Orthodox in the U.S. and Canada, and an even larger population in Israel. And the numbers are increasing fast, he says, because Hasidism strongly encourages very large families.
They don't believe in birth control. They believe that the commandment of be fruitful and multiply is incumbent upon all Jewish people, and they practice it. Not only do they have large families, but they are the poorest of all Jews because they don't go to college, so they lack often some of the skills that are necessary for high income. They are all literate in Jewish education, but their secular education is limited. That is not to say there are not some who are successful in the diamond business, electronics business, in trading on Wall Street.
Relatively few leave, in Professor HEILMAN's view, because they've been taught to shun the secular world.
They've been told that the world outside their own is demonic, corrosive, dangerous. They wouldn't want to be part of it, that they live a superior kind of life.
One of the things that they teach you is that we get to choose what we allow our eyes to see. We get to choose what we allow our ears to hear. And so when you go into the city, you make a conscious choice not to allow your eyes to see.
There's this whole belief or narrative in the community that if you try to break away or change, you will fail and you won't be happy and you'll just end up on drugs.
I mean, I'm annoyed by being asked if I'm going to come
LANI
back.
SANTO is the executive director of a nonprofit group called Footsteps, founded in 2003 not to proselytize but to provide counsel and support to those who want to explore life outside the confines of the world in which they were raised. They've assisted over 700 altogether so far. A majority are young men.
I mean, my mother still hasn't called me. My mother still hasn't spoken to me this whole time.
We are seeing a lot more. Just in this year alone, we've seen a 60% increase in our membership and in new people coming to us. And that's compared to a 35% increase that we've been on for the last few years.
In the past, it was easier to shelter those in ultra-religious communities from the outside world. Television, magazines, radio, even libraries were off limits. Then along came the internet.
The internet is a real problem for them. There have been efforts. For example, there was a recent gathering at Citi Field here in New York that was against the internet, but it's a case of trying to close the barn after the horses are out.
LANI SANTO says those who do leave suffer serious bouts of loneliness and guilt.
It's more about guilt in terms of impacting their families. If they have younger siblings, the fact that they're leaving is putting at risk the marriage prospects for their younger siblings, and that's a real challenge.
Marriage is critical. It's all by matchmaking. Finding single people in this community is rare, and if they're single, then it means they're problematic. And problematic can be that you have someone in the family who's not Orthodox, or that there's some mental or physical ailment in the family, or that there are, it can even be somebody has too many people with red hair in the family.
Any mark of difference is a mark of shame. So whether it's a mark of having a child that's leaving the community, whether it's a mark of having a child that's sexually abused, or whether there's some sort of ailment in the family, or someone who's committed suicide, all of that will be covered up.
The first thing that really struck me was the courage in the room.
Michael Jenkins is Footsteps' senior social worker. He says he's amazed at the risk young Hasidim are taking by even walking through the front door. He conducts group therapy and private counseling, says a number of people he meets with lead dual and deeply conflicted lives, with one foot in their Hasidic community and one foot out.
There's things in the community that I love, that work for me, family, friendships, relationships. This is where I've always been and this is where I want to be. Yet, there are things that I disagree with, and I want to be able to talk about that or express that somewhere else.
I want to be who I want to be, and if I find God, I find God on my own, you know? I don't go anymore like according to what I was told as a kid.
In Hasidic communities, young men study the Torah in Hebrew at least 7 hours a day and spend only 1 hour on secular education. So those who leave are woefully unprepared to go out on their own. Saul was 19 when he broke away.
What was your education level at that point?
If I had to estimate, it would probably be, 4th or 5th grade.
Was that pretty standard for
That's,
most of the men your age?
That's the norm, yeah. And in fact, I believe I was actually a little bit more advanced than some of my friends at the time.
Another consequence of the insularity is that if a crime is committed, it often goes unreported.
I have many friends, men and women, who have been abused sexually, physically, emotionally.
Saul is now in his 4th year as a pre-med student. He says it hasn't been easy. Some old friends speak to him, some don't. He says he has a message for others who are worried about leaving the sheltered world of Hasidism.
My point is, it's challenging and it looks really, really scary at the beginning. But it's possible.
As the world continues to shrink because of access to modern technology like the internet, it's becoming increasingly difficult for anyone or any group to shield their families from the outside world.
freedom.
For Religion and Ethics News Weekly, I'm Lucky Severson in New York.